Well, hello out there. I guess it's decided it doesn't want to work today. Tried playing my intro theme, but it did not want to go off without a hitch today. So, welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org or directly to me at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com. Today is episode 8 of This Week in U.S. Politics, and I'm live today on this Podcast 99 Internet Radio. So, let's get down to it. So I thought today I would actually talk about something outside of the state of Washington to start with. That's not necessarily a national level either. It's one of those ideas about protesters and the damage that they cause. Specifically about a law in Minnesota that proposes to target those who train or recruit protesters who damage critical infrastructure. Now, this is a bill that has come up in other states as well amidst protest movements against oil pipelines, particularly the constructions of the new ones. I'm getting this article actually from the Star Tribune. I believe it's the Minneapolis Star Tribune, but it's thestartribune.com is the website. It's written by Mike Hewlett, sorry. And just a brief but simple article, I believe, on what many people have issue with protesters. Not so much the actual protesting involved or the idea of the protest involved. It's the fact that you have all these people that actually do cause damage to infrastructure as well as people's property. So, like, for example, down here in Olympia, near where I live, they actually have damaged property, vehicles, whatnot. They've even at one point, I thought, tried to tear up the tracks if they could, but they weren't able to do that. The police actually do have some power over that, but at the same time, it's one of those things where they tend to actually try to intentionally cause damage. Now, sometimes it is the people in the protests themselves that are doing it, not necessarily the key ones that coordinate it, but somehow somebody gets invited into that protest and then invites other people to cause the damage. That's the premise of this law, the bill that they're trying to propose in Minnesota. Now, taken from the Star Tribune is this article. Sorry. In the past couple of years, there have been mass protests against new pipelines in several states, most notably the North Dakota pipeline over the North Dakota Access Pipeline. With the possibilities of pipeline protests looming in Minnesota, lawmakers are considering a new felony offense for anyone training or recruiting protesters who damage critical infrastructure. Supporters of this legislation say it's necessary to bolster public safety for pipelines, power lines, oil refineries, railroads, airports, and other important facilities. Opponents say that the legislation is an overreach intended to chill public protests. Now, from reading in that first couple paragraphs, I see both sides of the article, the opposition here. We shouldn't be, as protesters, damaging products, even if we disagree with those infrastructures being put into place. But also, we should not be also preventing people from protesting, preventing people from doing any of that, which the bill, from what I'm reading, is not doing that. What we're trying to say, or what it's trying to say, is that we're not supposed to, as protesters, be trying to cause damage to these things. If you're doing peaceful protesting, it is all about peaceful protesting. So, what are we going to do about it? Continuing on with the article, either way, Bills pending in Minnesota are similar to legislation in at least 5 other states. They come amid a protest movement against oil pipelines, particularly the construction of new ones, like the Einbridge proposal Line 3 replacement across northern Minnesota. The new legislation would penalize whoever, quote, whoever intentionally recruits, trains, aids, advises, hires, or counsels, end quote, somebody else to commit property damage on a pipeline or other critical public service facility. Such an act would be a felony punishable up to 10 years in prison and or a fine up to $20,000. It does seem a bit excessive at first when you think about it. It does seem a bit excessive. However, when you're thinking about a new project being put in place, you're causing a company, a private company, to lose thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars by the damage being done. In some cases, even millions. Well, what's going to happen? Now you're delaying jobs that people would have had that could have been going into your community. Yes, I understand the environmental impact. I'm not denying that there is the potential of an environmental impact by allowing these pipelines to be created. However, if we're going to be doing this, if we are going to be protesting this in a very activist way, you also have to be considerate of the actual environmental consequences that you could be causing. Because even if it's something that doesn't look like it's damaged, something really bad, you could actually have caused a compromise somewhere that could cost the pipeline, especially if it's an over the ground pipeline or even an underground pipeline, to cause the mass leakage, and nobody's going to know about it until it's too late. Even if properly inspected, sometimes those things don't go noticed as what the actual damage is, because on the outside it looks fine. I mean, I could inspect the inside and outside of a pipeline, but in between that area is where the real damage could have occurred. Now, on the opposite side of that, people do have the right to protest, and people have the right to have their voices heard about things coming across their community, their land, their environment. That should be considered, not just what's best for the country, but also what's best for the local people. Sometimes, yes, the straight line is the quickest route, but sometimes it's not the best route. I'm often reminded that when I see things like this, is people are like, we want the shortest distance to save costs. I get that. I would want that too. But at the same time, the cost to me should not be written off by those of the people around me, the people that I'm actually affecting. Simpsons episode when they're trying to build the Matlock Superhighway for the seniors in Springfield. And it's the Simpsons house because it's Sideshow Bob as mayor of the town. Or governor, I think is what it is. I can't remember. No, it was mayor. Sideshow Bob is mayor of Springfield. It's building the Matlock Superhighway to go right over, and one of the support pillars is right through the Simpsons house, because him and Bart have a long history of being enemies. They ended up trying to bulldoze the Simpsons house. Well, long story short, it didn't happen because it found out that Bob had actually, not won legally. So voter fraud, much like gets touted about anytime somebody loses. Oh, it was a voter fraud. That's a story for another time. Excuse me. Sorry. Had lunch a little bit ago, so decided to want to play around. Anyways, so we also have in this article, going back to it, quote, we can't have people instructing people on how to destroy critical infrastructure, end quote, said Representative Dennis Smith, Republican of Maple Grove, the main author of the House bill. Quote, it's like aiding and abetting, end quote. I would agree with that. That is definitely one of those things that, if I tell you how to destroy this particular device, so that way, or this particular key stanchion of a bridge, that's not going to cause it to fail, but it's going to cause it to to severely weaken and may potentially cause some damage elsewhere down the line. That's me aiding and abetting you and doing a crime. So you should be treated as such, just like everything else should be. And a lot of people don't realize that telling people how to do something that is in and of itself potentially criminal means that you should also be charged as criminal. It's like, well, I didn't do it. That's no excuse. It's like, me showing somebody how to build a bomb to take down a building. Yeah, I didn't actually physically create the bomb. I didn't actually physically touch any of the supplies for it. But by me telling somebody how to do it, means that I'm at least accomplice to the fact that they wanted to do something like this. So, we just have to, as a whole, as a group, come together and realize that we are, how do I put it? That we are basically culpable for our own actions as well as those that we instruct. And I agree with this actual bill here. Going back to the article, both the Senate and the House legislation also would impose civil liability on those who train and aid trespassers who damage property. The bill would extend civil liability, not just criminal responsibility, directly to trespassers, too. Quote, misguided is a very mild term, end quote, to describe the bills, said John Gordon, executive director of the Minnesota ACLU. Quote, they are trying to broaden guilt by association, end quote, when there are already Minnesota laws that deal with the conspiracy and aid the commission of crime. Quote, they're clearly trying to do something here that discourages people from exercising their right to protest and show freedom of speech, said Gordon. Quote, end quote, said Gordon. Okay. Time out here. Time out. ACLU, they are not trying to dissuade people from using their right to protest. They're not infringing upon their right to freedom of speech or tell them, no, you shouldn't be doing this. What they're trying to say is, hey, look, if you're going to engage in this activity, you need to expect to be dealing with the consequences. I cannot sit here and say Dave Bowman is an idiot and a retard and doesn't know what he's talking about and not expect him to retaliate and do something. Just like I can't say, hey, Joe Smith, go let out the air pressure on Dave's tires and blah, 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 and not expect Dave to want to retaliate and not expect him to come after me for anything like that, That's me telling somebody to do something. That's me telling them to commit a crime. Albeit a poor crime nonetheless, but still, the point is the bill is not sitting here trying to say don't do your rights given to you by the Bill of Rights. No. What it's trying to say is be ready to suffer the consequences of doing something illegal. Just because we have aiding and abetting laws on the books doesn't mean we can't toughen them up a bit. Just because you have sorry about that. Just because you have an actual a law on the books doesn't mean that you can't actually try to make it harder or make the punishment more severe for people if it's continually getting abused and people are getting away with it. Not saying that that's the case here, just one of the reasons why you would want to do it. Environmental groups, going back to the article here, are environmental groups opposed to the legislation concur, as does organized labor through the AFL-CIO. Smith said that the bills don't abridge freedom of speech rights. This is not meant to silence protesters. Or, quote, this is not meant to silence protesters, end quote. Let's see here. The legislation last week passed the House and Senate committees and will be moved to the floor of each chamber. The authors of the House bill are all Republican. 3 of the 5 senators are Republican. The other 2 are DFL senators. Tom Bake, I have no clue about the name. The minority leader from Cook, and David Thomasaroni from Chisholm. Again, I'm bad with names, sorry. So, alrighty. The legislation is supported by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce and the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers. According to the latter's website, Enbridge is not a member, though Koch Industries is. Koch, through its Flint Hills Resources subsidiary, owns a large oil refinery in Rosemont. Oh, Coach? I think I meant Koch, as in Koch, the Koch brothers. Yay. Oh, sorry about that. I'm trying to get into better habits here, so sorry. The backdrop of the legislation is protests both large and small. Smith noted the arrest of climate change activists who, in October 2016, disrupted the operation of 2 Enbridge oil pipelines northwest of Bemidji. 2 members of the group, called Climate Direct Action, broke into a fenced area to close pipeline emergency valves. They waited to be arrested. The pair was charged with criminal damage to public service facilities as well as aiding and abetting the same crime. Both felonies were punishable up to 10 years in prison and or a $20,000 fine. The 2 protesters who filmed them faced lesser charges. Their trial is pending. In the past couple of years, basically the rest of this is going on about the various Dakota Access Pipeline incidents and whatnot. Now, if we want to talk about protests, peaceful protests, and governments overreaching their authority, I can understand that. Yes, building pipelines on tribal land has to go through the tribal council. If it does not, and the federal government just takes the land because we need it, it's not viable. They could have easily built around it, but it's neither here nor there in this case. We're just talking specifically about Minnesota here. Although they did directly quote it, Senator Paul Utke is quoted saying, "We saw what happened in North Dakota, and we have a big pipeline project coming up in Minnesota, and we saw people coming from all over the U.S. and create havoc. We put law enforcement in danger." End quote. It's me taking a couple paragraphs and just pulling his quotes. With Standing Rock, it's more complicated than people want to admit. Yes, it is about tribal lands. It is about people exercising the right to protest private companies and the federal government from overreach. And I back that 100%. No problem. But when you start venturing into damages, when you start destroying property, damaging property that does not belong to you, that belongs to these companies that, yes, want to build on your land, it is not then peaceful protesting. It is not even really protesting at that point. It is an act of war, basically, against these companies. And I'm sorry, but war comes with consequences. War of words comes with consequences too. The Plantagenet king that swore up and down why he was surrounded by a bunch of imbecile knights that could not take care of a simple archbishop for him. Ended up killing an archbishop, even though he didn't actually mean for them to do that, because he was actually friends with that archbishop. Spent the better part of his life repenting for that sin. We got to look at it similarly. When we protest, have to be willing to live up to the consequences of that protest. Some of us can actually, feign ignorance of an event if we are protesting an event, but it doesn't mean that we are not completely free of the consequences of that. If I go and protest downtown Olympia for something I don't know, blue cheese rights or something. I don't know. It's just, something silly. And there are people around me causing damage. If I am not seen visibly trying to stop them from causing damage, I would hope that they would, at the very least, bring me in for questioning. Why didn't you stop them? And then I can, plead my case as such. Maybe maybe they came up and told me that if I tried to do that, they would cause me harm. And I was defending myself and whoever else I was with at that time. I don't know. But that's not going to be the excuse for everybody. Some people are just being like, I didn't care. It's not my property. What do I care? And those people that do that, we need to actually consider that they're aiding and abetting at that point. But this goes more directly to those that are actually training them. If I teach you how to cut the brake line on something, or if I teach you how to disable an engine for this particular kind of equipment, I would hope that I would get caught. But at the same time, it's one of those things. It's, what are they going to do? Well, basic aiding and abetting laws might not be enough to catch me. So, all right. So let's see here. What's the next one? Terry Hauska, not to be confused with Stephen Hauschka, National Campaign Director for the indigenous environmental group Honor the Earth, said that people who were accused of unlawful things at Standing Rock were brought into the legal system that already exists. Hundreds of people were arrested and charged with trespassing at Standing Rock, including Hauska, but were not convicted. If someone chooses in any type of protest to engage in property destruction, they are liable for that. But the Minnesota legislation could extend liability to people who are just protesting, she said. Okay, let's take that side of the thought here. Let's look at that side of this argument here. If I am protesting next to you, and I have nothing to do with that, it's a big, weeks-long protest where we're just sitting around the pipeline fence trying to prevent people from coming in to do their work, blah, blah, blah. And at night, you sneak off to go do whatever. For all I know, you're going off to go shack up with your lover or whatever. Come back the next morning, they find out that, there's damage done to it. They come talk to me, and they're like, oh, well, you aided and abetted. I'm going to fight that tooth and nail. And I totally agree that anybody should. But if they can prove that I actually told you something, if they can prove that I actually said something to you that would allow you to actually do that damage, I'd better be willing to own up to that. And that's the thing. They have to prove that I did something to warrant this, and they have to prove that you told them that I told you, type of thing. So it's a he said, she said type of thing, or he said, she said, she said. Insert pronoun here. That's the way it's going to go. Now, for all the best that it's got, let's see here. How do I want to put this? For all of that, we have to sit here and look at what is it about protesting that is hard for us to not participate in an actual damaging, or what is it from our point of view that when we're protesting that we don't that we for whatever reason cannot seem to resist rioting or rioting or damage of property, things like that. That's what we have to look at. We have to concern ourselves with that. And I would hope that we would all see that as a point for us as an individual person. We have to know what it is that we're engaging in. Don't just blindly join any cause. Research it, get to understand it. That's what we have to do. Let's see here. Trying to find something else here. But the whole point is we have to seriously consider, where does my right to protest, my right of free speech, end and somebody else's right to their property begin? And the answer should be their property. Doesn't matter if it's something you agree with or not. You should not be damaging it. You should not be trying to decide if it is or not. What it is or not. That it should be damaged or not. That's not your place to decide that. Even if you are protesting, it's not your place to do any of that. It is your place to make your voice heard. It is your place to do this and not ruin somebody else's property. That'd be like, I hate to say it, I'm not a fan of theirs, but I also understand their right to protest, their right to their freedom of religion, but the Westboro Baptist Church. Do I think it's disgraceful? Do I think it's disgusting and dishonorable of them to protest the funerals of veterans coming back who have died for their freedoms, to defend their right to do that? Yes. I despise it. If I could talk to them individually, I'd want to berate them all for doing something so cowardly and so disgusting. But it is their right. It is their ability to do that. That veterans like myself and veterans around the world have given to them. So it's one of those. It's just it's one of those things that is just driving me nuts. So protesting, again, I don't want to curb anybody's freedom of speech. I don't want to curb anybody's right to call out the government for any reason that is seen as a trespass against the people of the United States, or locally at a state level, depending on what your state constitution allows, regarding also what the federal law allows. So what but at the same time, we also have to realize that there are consequences to our actions as protesters. We also have to understand that there are consequences that are criminal, and whether you see it that way or not is moot. The law is the law, and destroying something that is part of a protest is not protected, and nor should it be. You know, like people talk about hate speech. Even you talk about how people allow the KKK to talk, and they're inciting hate speech against people of color, non-Christians, as the KKK defines them, because they are spreading hate, but they're not going out and saying, go kill these people directly. They're just saying deport them. They're saying all this other stuff. I'm going down a rabbit hole I do not want to go down. Stop there. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is, look, we have our rights. We have the right to spread our opinion. But as long as we're not inciting violence and we're not conducting violence or criminal acts, your freedom of speech is not being trampled on. Your right to protest is not trying to be silenced or stamped out. No, it is being defended. I mean, look at Berkeley and Milo Yiannopoulos. That's a textbook case of not letting somebody have their freedom of speech. But anyways, enough of protesting. Enough of that. Let's move on. I was going to try and do something local here in Washington, but something else just caught my eye, and it's a business that I used to be a part of, and it's something I still love to do: traveling. Now, if I had a chance, I was actually going to put in I was going to actually put in some music and stuff, but for whatever reason, me and the broadcaster are not playing along nicely today. So I will have to figure that out. Hopefully it's all working. And I have just realized I do not have my. Oops, I don't need that. That's not what I wanted. I don't have my chat open, so it's like one of those things. I'm like, somebody could actually be talking. All working, and just don't. I have just realized. So let's mute that. Let's go to live chat. Like I said, I'm live on the podcast99.org. Click on there to get our thing, and I don't see that I'm actually live, so I'm actually going to stop that. I pressed it. Start archiving stream. That is really weird. I think it's going to be all dead air, and we'll have to select that. My mic on. There we go. Mic on. Mic on. Testing. I don't know. I hope it's been recording. If not, we'll pull the audio, and I'm recording it myself anyways. So I'm actually don't know what happened. I should have been looking at that the whole time. Shows that I'm on air. There. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. So we have with Hawaii, the Hawaii State Supreme Court considers tax appeal by travel firms. There's for those of you who don't know, Hawaii is a great travel destination, depending on where you want to go in Hawaii. There's also some taxes that help maintain the economy, but they're not huge taxes entirely, but some of them are pretty big. So let's go into the article. This is from the Associated Press. I don't know the exact author, but from Honolulu, the Hawaii Supreme Court will decide on whether online travel companies are required to pay general excise taxes for car rentals they sell in the state. The travel companies are appealing a 2006 state court ruling that required the companies to pay the tax, the Honolulu Star-Advisor reported on Friday. Expedia, Priceline, and Travelocity owe the state about $30 million under the ruling by Judge Gary W.B. Chang, said Gary Cristini, an attorney representing the State Department of Taxation. Under the ruling, the travel companies are required to pay the taxes on their gross receipts for transactions only involving car rentals. For the rental sales that were part of a tour package, the companies will be required to pay tax on only the portion of the proceeds from the car rentals. So, if you haven't been to Hawaii, you haven't done a travel agency, or haven't done travel by itself, I don't know what to tell you. They're pretty fun. Some of them are a little quick. Some of them are slow. I don't know how you would like to go about them, but they are fun. I'm not going to give credence to one or the other, like any particular company or anything like that. I find them to be fun, but again, sometimes it could be a little slow and drag out. So there's that. The judge also ruled that the companies owed the state general excise tax for previous tax years, plus penalties and interest. In oral arguments before the state's highest court Thursday, Paul Aston, who represents the travel companies, said that renting cars is a tourism-related service protected by the state law from taxing at the retail level if already taxed at wholesale. As a result, companies should not pay general excise taxes. Cristiani disputed the claim, saying that rental cars is not a tourism-related service because it's not listed as such under the state law. The law lists specific services like tours and cruises. The court is expected to issue its ruling in the coming months. I will be looking forward to that one, actually. And the Hawaii Supreme Court ruled in 2015 that travel companies are required to pay state taxes for hotel rooms they sell online. So I think that's the end of this article, but it's the one that I love talking about is travel. Many don't know that I used to own travel agency on the side that I tried to get up and running. It just fell apart between moving twice in 5 months and all that. But travel, I love traveling. I love going to see places. I love going to see that. Now, renting a car in Hawaii can be fairly easy, but also can be expensive because, again, like everything on the islands, it has to be shipped over or flown over, costing a lot of money. And the state taxes certain things heavier than others, um, and allows for things to be priced higher than others. One of the many things that I've tried not to do is actually rent a car while I'm there. Last time we were there, we stayed at the Outrigger Reef, Waikiki, on the edge of Waikiki, close on the airport side of Waikiki. Actually, stone's throw away from the Halikoa for those of you military that stay down in that area. Basically, kind of the start of the the start of the downtown side of the tourism side. Right across from the Trump Towers, all that fun stuff. We were within a reasonable walking distance of every tour that we had to go to, or the starting point of every tour we had to go to, or they'd come pick us up directly at our hotel, which is great. That's pretty nice. The one day we rented a car was really just to kind of drive around a bit, try to go see things. Drove out to Aulani, the Disney resort out there. But when I did it, I didn't think about the taxes. I didn't think about, well, what am I paying extra that maybe somebody else isn't? This could be one of those things where if I had ordered it through a travel site, I might not have paid a general excise tax on it. I don't know. All these taxes can add up and can break your tourism. How do I break the way the tourists come flocking to your country? I don't know. This is definitely one of those things that is definitely one of those things that we have to look at when we're discussing any sort of bills, any sort of laws. How is it going to impact your tourism? Because every state has their own tourism board of some sort to try and draw people to come visit, to bring money from outside the locals, so that way you're not taxing all the people in your area. I, for one, just got a Facebook message from Dave. I am on there. Let's see here. Sorry. Just trying to make things sound better. Driving everything up. All right. So, wow, lost my train of thought there. Okay, so Hawaii is pretty much predominantly on its tax dollars from transportation, and we are and where was I going with this? It's primarily on its tourism fees that we pay at the hotels, that we pay on our airport or cruise landing, however you get to Hawaii, however you go back from Hawaii. I can understand where these tourism companies or travel firms are coming from. If I'm trying to have a company, or if I'm trying to sell somebody something to do on the island that maybe is not done by a tour group, then I should probably try and help them, push them to get a car. And if I can sell them that car rental, then if I can bring in some savings to my company, that would be great. But at the same time, as a tourist, I don't want to necessarily be booking everything. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't necessarily want to always be booking everything in advance, because maybe one day the day I decide I want the rental car, I don't want to do it. I don't want to pay for garaging it. I don't want to pay all this other stuff, It is what it is. It's just one of those random things that we have to consider. with Hawaii, again, so much of it is based upon its tourism. I'd be interested to see what they have for the list. Let's see here. I saw that. Where was it? The law specifically states what services, like tours and cruises. Let's see if we can't pull that up here really quick. All right, so Hawaii. Let's see what law are we looking at specifically? State tax laws. Travel. All right. Oh, here we go. Taxhawaii.gov. Gov, not glove. Oh. Let's see here. Tax laws and rules. Trying to see if I can find it quickly here. Sorry. Taxation. Wanted a list. Let's see here. Yeah, I can't find it very well. If I find it, I will post a link to it so you can get the full list. But to me, it just seems like one of those general taxes that the state wants to collect on, and I understand. How else are you supposed to fund your budget? Because unlike the federal government, most states have to operate on a fixed budget, and if they go over, they better be able to cover it in the next year to offset. So that basically 1 year it goes from being red and being well into the black. I mean, here in Washington, we set a 2-year budget, and it had better balance. Otherwise, we have things such as the McCleary school ruling. That's what I was trying to think of. McCleary, the one I was talking about last week or the week before. Hawaii is well within its right to enforce companies to pay their taxes. Now, what's going to happen if they enforce that? Well, what are these companies going to do? Just projecting out, just thinking out of my mind. If I was Expedia, that's a gold mine there, Hawaii. But maybe I might limit who I contract with as far as rental cars, or maybe I don't offer rental car services as much, or if I do, to make up what I have just paid, so to speak, I would charge a fee, an extra rental fee, and call it the excise tax fee or something like that. It's one of those things is we, with Hawaii, kind of have to, like Hawaiians, they'll have to figure out what they're going to do to worry about these taxes, because they have to pay their taxes just like Hawaii state residents have to pay their own taxes and whatnot. Can't go anywhere and not pay a tax of some sort. I mean, heck, Seattle, if you're visiting Seattle from out of town, you were paying for my stadiums. Thank you, by the way. Other ways of doing things, other ways of having taxes is sales tax. Here in Washington, we have like an 8.9% sales tax, something like that. California has both an income tax and a sales tax, whatever it may be. But it was one of those. It was one of those articles that I popped up and thought it was pretty interesting, so I thought I would do it. Let's see here. Another one that's popping up. This one I got more from nolabels.org. Is they had a questionnaire out, or a vote, a poll, whatever you want to call it, about, do you think the 2020 census should ask if you are a citizen or not? Why not? What's the issue with that? It's about the proportionment of, the congressional districts, among many other things, but that's, one reason. If you have more people that are being represented, although they might not be legal voters, they might not be capable of doing too much as far as, tearing down your base or anything. But at the same time, we have a right to know who we have in our country, if they're there legally or not. It could be a simple question: Are you a resident? Yes or no? That simple. Then from there, they can go and look. Okay, well, this person shows up on our list as a valid student. Okay, no problem. Disregard. No, this person's here as a migrant worker. Okay, fine, no big deal. The people that are here illegally, that shouldn't be here, that they've overstayed their welcome. Yes, they should be deported at a very base level, a very basic understanding. I agree with that. But at the same time, we also have to figure how productive are they being towards society. Um, are they working towards getting citizenship? Citizenship. Wow, having a hard time with that word today. Or are they just sitting there trying to mooch off of the system, which they can't actually do? But are they trying to basically just stay here for the sake of staying here because it is actually better than where they came from? That's kind of a moot point, or not a moot point, but that's kind of the point. Is we have a right to know who's here legally, who's here not, and we have a right to kick those people out. Now, the DACA kids, that's a whole nother matter in and of itself. That is not just a base yes or no answer. Again, it's going to come down to, are you trying to be a productive member of our society? Are you trying to assimilate to our culture? And assimilate does not necessarily mean that you give up your heritage, your culture. No, it just means that you have to bend your culture to our ways. I mean, like if I went to, say I went to China and I moved there, like with the intent to become a citizen, it would be expected of me to learn Chinese culture, to learn the languages. Yes, plural. They have multiple dialects there. Same thing with India or any other country. I would have to go and learn to assimilate their culture. Now, here in the United States, we have freedom of religion, which allows us to practice whatever religion we want. I could, if I chose to, practice Islam. And there is not a thing you or anybody else could do about that. As long as I am not hurting anybody and I'm not holding people at gunpoint or any other form of harassment to convert to my religion, they aren't, you can't do anything about me wanting to practice Islam. Nothing you can do. Not that I'm going to, but that's not the point. People coming in from these Arab countries, people fleeing these extremists, more likely are not. Yes, the extremists might be trying to propose to get people in here to cause problems. I'm not naive. I'm not dumb. Not oblivious to the fact that that could happen. But most of these people want to come here to assimilate. And yet we are making it difficult for them. We are making it hard for them to want to come and assimilate and stay. With constant Islamophobia, things like that. The ones that are here that are trying to make a difference go unnoticed by our society. They go unnoticed by the law, by the news agencies out there, because they are trying not to rock the boat. They're trying not to get attention drawn to them. They just want to assimilate and not worry about it. Those people, I welcome. Those people that want to come in and try and improve our culture, try and improve our society, great. You can spread some of your beliefs around, because maybe there's something in the Christian religion that Islam can bring to it. Before you start badgering me, people, don't. It is just a comparison to say that, just because you know just because you're Christian, you're the best. No. I mean, heck, your whole religion is founded off of an older religion, so, and Islam's founded off of both you and the other older religions. So there's room to grow, there's room to learn. And we have to sit there and try and do that. I mean, same thing with people coming from India, Same thing with people coming from China and Japan, Vietnam, anywhere. They're allowed to come in and try and improve their lot in life. They're allowed to try and improve themselves. And we should allow them that. Yes, they should go by the rules, and I'm not saying that. But at the same time, with the DACA kids, what's to say that they should pay for, excuse me, what's saying that they should pay for the sins of their family by being deported to a country they've never been? They have no clue about the upbringing of that culture. They have no idea about that culture other than what their parents tell them or their grandparents tell them. For example, say for example, I wanted to say, okay, perfect example. If I remember my history from what my family has told me, my biological grandfather on my mother's side, his parents are from Norway. Okay, let's say they did not do it legally. Let's say everyone in my family on my mom's side is now potentially deportable because we are here illegally. Now, mind you, my mom married my dad, so therefore she technically could get her green card. But let's just say that did not happen. Let's say the whole line of us is just nothing but a bunch of bastard children who have not married or anything like that. If we were to be deported to go back to live in Norway, we would have a hard time assimilating. I mean, immersion is the best way to learn a language, but at the same time, we are going to sit here and be deported just like all these other people. Is it our fault that somebody down the line, further down the line than us, did something illegal? Well, we haven't done anything illegal. We've been doing everything that we can legally, other than maybe earning our citizenship. But that's kind of the moot point. That's the point I'm trying to make here, is that we inherently want to put the sins of the parents on the children. In the case of DACA, and it's like, at what point were we going to say no? At what point are we to say, oh, well, I'm sorry, I know that my family sinned, but I will leave? That's not fair, because, I mean, for my whole life, I've been American. I've been living the American lifestyle. And now I have to go back to Norway? Really? Now, again, that's just, me taking an extreme hypothetical there with my family, with my mom's side of the family. But the point is, if that was found out, and again, my parents had never married, and again, I never married, or either one of my sisters married, or even my aunts and uncle, if all had just stayed in our own little bubble, I mean, why deport us if we've done nothing wrong other than the fact that our ancestors did? Now, granted, the DACA kids, it's a little more close to home. It is usually a parent member that brought the child in, and for the most part, a child is not going to say no to mom and dad. Going back to the census, the 2020 census, I know it's been a long arcing tangent here, but going back to the census, we should expect them to answer honestly. We should expect, I should assume that anybody here is here legally, but are they always going to be a citizen? No. We have foreign diplomats here that have private residences, or not even diplomats. We have foreign nationals that come here to do business, and their business entities own a house or own an apartment flat, things like that. That as part of our census taking. No, I'm not a resident. I'm here illegally, or no, I'm, etc. Now, this is going to cause people to fear ICE. They're going to have the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I understand that. I mean, it is one of those things where we have to, as a group, work on. It is one of those things we have to figure out what's going to be best for all of us. Is that going to be making sure we know who's here and apportioning our government appropriately? Or is it going to be, let's protect these few people that are, for lack of a better term, in hiding. I mean, it's one of those things. It is. I it just baffles my mind that we cannot. Well, it doesn't baffle my mind. We're humans. We never all agree on one thing. I mean, that's why we have, two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. We have the various other smaller parties, including the Libertarians, which are not so small, but we even have our own communist party in this country. But it's not the. But the point I'm trying to make is that it baffles my mind that we are so divided on something as simple as a census test, as simple as a census itself. The whole point of this census is to apportion our representatives accordingly. Some states lose some as they lose population, and others gain those ones. I mean, the last census, the state of Washington went from, I think, 9 to 12 or 9 to 11, something like that. Crazy, crazy how quickly that can jump up just by people moving from one state to another. That's where we have to. That's where we have to kind of draw the line. What's the best interest for the country as a whole? Not just the people, but as the country as a whole. There's certain issues, going back to the pipeline issue, kind of full circle here. There are some issues that are definitely small and need to be done at the local level, and we need to worry about that. There are also those that encompass the whole country, and that we have to worry about those as well. That is that is where we as a nation need to come together. That is where we have to focus on it. So I hope that we can all learn from this. I hope we can learn from our own philosophies, our own whether they're political ideologies, whether they're religious ideologies, anything like that. The point of having a government to represent the people, the masses, is to do what's best for the country as a whole. And the best way to do that is through our census. Now, doesn't mean that we all have to agree to it, and definitely we need our state legislatures to stop gerrymandering. It's a whole nother topic, and Dave's got a couple of podcasts on that, I believe. At the very least, one I know of for sure. But we need to move forward. We need to move on with this and start focusing on how our legislatures need to start. Federal legislatures need to start focusing on what they're going to do with these DACA kids, and how they're going to actually have the executive branch enact the policies that they've written into law. They need to start worrying about those bigger things, not just how am I going to get elected in 2 years, or how am I going to get reelected in 2 years. So, with that, I just want to say thank you again for listening. This is me. This is me going live on the Podcast 99 Internet Radio. I don't know how it sounded out. Dave has provided me with some feedback. I don't know if he's still listening, but we're. But hopefully this sounded better now that I've saw his things. We'll go from there. Like I said, Jay from Jay's Politics Podcast. You can hit me up at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at jpolypodcast. Feel free to send me emails on local issues that you have that you want to talk about or that you would like me to talk about. I love to research. Like I said, I used this episode to try and branch out by going to Minnesota, and then happened to see one about Hawaii while I was looking for something more local to me. It doesn't have to be necessarily something that's going to affect everybody on a national level. It could literally be something as small as your city or county. It could be something as big as your state or the federal government. Let me know what you want to talk about. I'm willing to talk about it myself. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. There we go. Sorry if you're still watching on the YouTube channel. I'm still broadcasting.